November 13th, 1942. 1:38 a.m. Ironbottom Sound. Off Guadalcanal, between Savo Island and the dark spine of the slot. The sea is flat enough to look harmless, but you can feel the current tug at the hull like a hand trying to pull the ship sideways. The night is so black it seems thick, something you could scoop up with your palms. No moon, just cloud and faint starlight that dies on the water. And somewhere ahead, inside that darkness, metal is moving. In the Combat Information Center, the air is stale and hot, sweat and electrical insulation and coffee that's been boiling too long. The only light comes from dim red bulbs and the green glow of a radar scope. The screen is a small world, a circle of nothing with thin, bright marks that appear and vanish like ghosts. You can almost hear the ocean through the steel. A radar operator leans in so close his breath fogs the glass. His finger hovers over the scope as if touching it can make the truth clearer. Contact, bearing 025, range 9,000 yards. A pause. The numbers don't feel real. They're too clean for the chaos outside. Another voice, tenser, adds multiple pips. Tight group. In the darkness above deck, sailors can't see anything beyond the bow. The night hides the horizon. It hides the shoreline. It hides the enemy. But down here, the scope says they're not alone. Down here, the green blips are the only eyes the fleet has. The problem is those eyes are young. Early radar is brilliant and dumb at the same time. It can see through darkness and rain, then lie to you with the confidence of a machine. A wrong range, a smeared return, a fleeting echo that looks like a cruiser when it's actually a destroyer, or looks like nothing because it's tucked behind land clutter. A second of delay that feels tiny until it becomes a mile of ocean at 30 knots. And on Guadalcanal, 1 mile is the difference between a clean ambush and ships shooting through each other. The task force slides forward in a loose file. American cruisers and destroyers threading a gap of water that feels too narrow for what's about to happen. Somewhere on the bridge, a captain stares into the black and thinks the same thought every night fighter thinks. If I could just see, but you can't. Not tonight. Tonight is a radar war and a voice report war, and both are only as good as the men translating them into decisions. In CIC, a talker repeats bearings into a phone, voice clipped, precise, trying to sound calm because calm is contagious. Contact group now, bearing 030, closing. The officer of the watch listens, eyes darting between the plot and the scope. Grease pencil marks crawl across a chart like insects. Lines, arrows, tiny circles, attempts to freeze motion into something a human brain can control. Above, the destroyers at the front, nervous, eager, slice through the water like knives. Their torpedo men are at their tubes, hands resting on valves. Their gun crews stand by, fingers near triggers, staring into emptiness. The first hint of land is Savo Island, a darker darkness on the left, a mass that blocks starlight and turns radar returns into tricky shadows. Land can lie too. It can hide contacts behind it. It can bounce signals in ways that make a ship appear where it isn't. The radar operator swallows. Sir, I'm getting intermittent. Could be ships, could be. Say again, the officer snaps. The operator adjusts gain, tweaks controls. The blips flicker, strong, then weak. Like someone is flashing a lantern from far away and then covering it again. In the black water, the Japanese are coming down the slot. Fast, practiced, deadly. They've done night fighting for years. They train for it. Their lookouts are drilled to see silhouettes where others see void. Their formations are built for sudden violence. Searchlights snapping on like a spotlight. Guns already loaded, torpedoes already warmed. And the Americans in this moment are relying on a new sense they still don't fully trust. The radios crackle with voices stepping over each other. Range reports, bearings, orders being repeated. The kind of sound that tells you control is fraying. A new report comes in from another ship. Targets dead ahead. Closer than expected. Closer. That word makes every spine tighten. Because closer means someone's picture is wrong. A radar picture. A plotted course. A mental map in a captain's head. The ocean doesn't care which one. In CIC, the plotter draws a line, then hesitates. Sir, if that's correct, then we're inside their screen. Inside the screen means this is no longer an engagement at neat, comfortable distance. It means the fleets are about to collide like two fists in a dark room. A phone rings. Another. Orders go out. Prepare to open fire. The ship's guns are trained into blackness. Elevations set. directors listening, loaders waiting with shells that feel alive in their hands. The turrets are massive, but tonight they're blind giants waiting for someone to point. The officer in CIC leans closer to the scope. How many contacts? The operator answers, voice suddenly thin. More than we thought. Another beat. And, sir, some are mixed with ours. Mixed. That's the poison word. Because in tight water at night, mixed means the enemy is close enough that formations overlap, bearings compress, and a mistake is no longer a mild error. It's a broadside into a friendly ship. Outside, the darkness is still perfect, still indifferent. Then, like a match flaring in a cave, a searchlight snaps on. A hard white beam cuts across the water and lands on steel. A ship's superstructure blooms into view, suddenly real, suddenly huge, suddenly close enough that you can see mast lines and gun barrels and men frozen in the glare. And, for a fraction of a second, nobody knows what they're looking at. Friend? Enemy? The radar said one thing. The visual picture says another. The voice reports are half a second behind reality. In that half second, a commander makes the kind of decision you only get to make once. Open fire. The first broadside erupts, flame and thunder, the night lit up in violent pulses. Shells arc into the glare. Water fountains explode where rounds fall short. Metal screams where rounds hit home. And in the strobing chaos, the radar scope in CIC keeps painting its calm green lies. Blips sliding, merging, separating, while above deck the world becomes pure instinct. Because now it's not about who has the better guns. It's about who understands what they're shooting at. And somewhere in that confusion, a battleship, big enough to feel invincible, has just been placed in the wrong spot on the wrong mental map. Right as every gun in the sound begins to speak. The first broadside doesn't sound like one ship firing. It sounds like the whole ocean cracking open. In the glare of the searchlight, the target's superstructure becomes a white, hard shape. Mast, bridge, gun houses. So close it feels obscene. Men on deck don't have time to admire it. They only have time to react. Commence firing. Turrets answer. Secondary batteries answer. Destroyer guns hammer in rapid, furious beats. Tracers stitch the night. Shell splashes rise like sudden buildings. And every few seconds, the darkness lights up in orange flashes that turn the sea into a strobing nightmare. Down in CIC, the radar screen keeps doing what machines do best, calmly reporting chaos as geometry. Blips merge, separate, flicker, and then the worst thing happens. The picture stops making sense. A talker leans over the plot, voice rising despite himself. Sir, contacts are overlapping. We've got friendlies inside the target cluster. Inside the cluster. That means the formation has collapsed into the enemy's formation. Two lines that should be miles apart now tangled at knife range. It's no longer target bearing, target range. It's point-blank identification in the dark. And identification at night is a cruel game because everything looks the same for the first half second. Gray hull, white spray, black silhouettes. A cruiser can look like a destroyer. A destroyer can look like a cruiser. And a battleship, if you only catch it in fragments of light, can look like anything until it starts firing back. On one bridge, a commander squints into the glare and sees the long barrel shapes, the bulk, the tower. Enemy cruiser, someone shouts. Another voice cuts in, uncertain. That's too big for her. The sentence doesn't finish because the enemy answers with a flash that isn't a cruiser's flash. It's heavier, deeper, a thunder that hits her chest and makes the deck plates vibrate. In the sudden brightness, the truth is visible for an instant. This isn't a cruiser. This is a battleship, the Japanese High, flagship of a bombardment force that came down the slot expecting to smash Henderson Field and vanish before dawn. And now she's inside a brawl, so close it feels like a bar fight between warships. You can almost feel the shift in mood across the American line. The way confidence becomes urgency, urgency becomes panic, and panic tries to become discipline again. Because a battleship doesn't have to be accurate at this range. It only has to fire. The Japanese use their searchlights like weapons, sweeping beams across hulls, pinning ships in bright white columns. The light doesn't just reveal targets. It blinds the men being illuminated, ruins night vision, turns the lit ship into a stage for every gun in the sound. A destroyer appears out of the dark at absurdly close range, so close you can see spray over its bow, and rips into the battleship's side with gunfire like a man emptying a pistol at a giant. It's bravery and desperation wrapped together. The battleship's reply is immediate. A salvo of larger shells tears through the night, and the destroyer is suddenly not a ship so much as a violent event. Steel ripped, water and fire thrown upward, men clinging to railings as the world becomes flame. And in the American formation, confusion deepens. Because in this kind of fight, radar isn't truth anymore. It's delay. A bearing called out 5 seconds ago is already wrong. A range calculated is already obsolete. The plotted track doesn't match the reality of ships turning hard to avoid collisions, weaving around burning wrecks, firing at muzzle flashes because muzzle flashes are the only honest things left. Someone yells, "Target, port," and 3 ships swing their guns port. Someone else yells, "That's friendly," and the word friendly lands too late. The night swallows the distinction, and the guns keep firing because stopping feels like dying. A cruiser, caught in a beam, takes fire from multiple directions. She's so brightly lit that every gunner who can see her believes he's seeing the enemy. The shells punch in. Metal screams. Men are thrown off their feet. And for the men on that bridge, the horror isn't just being hit. It's not knowing by whom. In the thick of it, orders are being shouted into phones, repeated across circuits, and twisted by stress. Cease fire. Shift target. Engage searchlight. Where are our destroyers? And below deck, in CIC, the green scope continues to paint an impossible picture. Contacts where there are no contacts, gaps where there are ships, returns smeared by land, by spray, by interference. Early radar is giving the fleet something precious, awareness. And at the same time, it's giving them the most dangerous gift in war. False confidence. Because if you believe the scope more than your eyes, you might fire at the wrong silhouette. And if you believe your eyes more than the scope, you might ignore the battleship lurking just beyond your beam. The Japanese battleship High is now being struck again and again by cruiser shells, destroyer shells, even close-range fire that hammers her bridge and superstructure. Small caliber hits don't sink a battleship quickly, but they do something else. They blind her. They shred her command spaces. They kill the men who turn decisions into rudder angles and gun orders. A shell slams into her upper works, and sparks race along cables like lightning. Another hit punches into a searchlight assembly, and it dies, plunging part of her deck back into darkness. For a moment, High's a huge shape half-lit, half-hidden, wounded, enraged, and still dangerous enough to kill anything near her. And still, in the American line, the crossfire continues. Ships firing past each other, shells screaming overhead, the sea full of near misses that erupt into towering columns of water. Someone on an American bridge realizes the worst truth of all. The enemy is not ahead. The enemy is everywhere. Right side, left side, dead ahead, behind. The battle has become a spinning room with loaded guns. In that room, a battleship, one of the largest ships in the Sound, is trying to turn, trying to break free, try to escape the close-range chaos before daylight arrives and aircraft finish the job. But turning a battleship in tight water at night is like turning a cathedral. It's slow, it's committed, and as High begins to swing her great hull, more American guns find her again, attracted to her size like wolves to a wounded animal. A destroyer closes, dangerously close, looking for an angle to launch torpedoes because a torpedo doesn't care about belt armor if it hits in the right place. The destroyer's crew knows what they're doing is almost suicidal. They do it anyway, because in the black waters of Ironbottom Sound, you don't win with perfect plans. You win with seconds. And somewhere in those seconds, the radar, calm green blips, has already helped create a mess so tight that the next mistake won't just cost a ship. It will decide which side still has engines when the night finally ends. And the night is not ending yet. High, damage slowed, her bridge shaken, pushes into darker water, trying to limp away, just as American lookouts catch another huge silhouette sliding in behind her, deeper in the slot. Another capital ship, another set of heavy guns. And now the question isn't whether the radar lied. It's whether anyone can survive what the truth is about to reveal. The second silhouette isn't just big. It's impossible. A low, massive hull sliding through darkness with the patient confidence of a predator that knows the water is its home. The men who glimpse it don't see details, just scale. Just the way the sea seems to part differently around it. Just a sense of weight. Someone whispers a name before anyone confirms it. Kirishima, another Japanese battleship. Another set of 14-inch guns that can turn cruisers into debris. In the American formation, already tangled, already bleeding, has to decide what to do with this new threat while the first one, High, is still stumbling away wounded. But the night isn't offering time for decisions. It's offering only consequences. Inside CIC, the radar operator wipes sweat from his upper lip and leans closer to the scope. The green screen is still glowing, but now it's cluttered, returns smeared by land and spray, contact pips overlapping like ink dropped in water. The operator tries to refine the picture, adjust gain, tweak controls, trying to separate ships from ghosts. Then the scope does something that feels like betrayal. It loses them. Not fully, just enough. The contacts flicker. The cluster breaks. A blip that was enemy a moment ago disappears into clutter. Another blip appears where nothing should be. The plot becomes uncertain, and uncertainty in a night battle is not neutral. It's deadly. You can almost feel the frustration inside CIC. We're supposed to be the eyes. We're supposed to be the advantage. Why won't the advantage behave? A phone rings. A voice barks through it. CIC. Confirm target bearing. Confirm range. The operator hesitates. Hesitation isn't allowed in combat, but giving a wrong number is worse than silence. He swallows. Contact, possible, bearing. He stops himself. Standby. Standby is another poison phrase. Because on the bridge, standby means the captain is now alone with darkness and instinct. Above deck, the strobing gunfire has eased in places, smoke and confusion making targets harder to hold, but searchlights still stab across the water, pinning ships like insects. The sea is a mess of wakes, burning oil, and sudden splashes. Every ship is maneuvering hard, trying not to collide, trying not to be illuminated, trying not to drift into a torpedo track. And High, crippled in her command spaces, hurt in ways a battleship is not built to absorb in close quarters, keeps trying to run. The hits she's taken aren't the kind that rip open her belt and flood her instantly. They're worse for navigation. Shells that wreck steering gear, that damage rudder control, that shred communications between bridge and engine rooms, that kill the men who coordinate a ship this large. A battleship with degraded steering in confined waters at night becomes something almost tragic. Huge power fighting against sluggish control. She tries to swing out of the melee and instead drifts into angles she never intended, offering broadside aspects to enemies who don't need perfect aim at this range. American gunners, seeing the big silhouette, keep hitting her whenever they can, because the instinct is simple. If it's big and Japanese, shoot it until it stops moving. But the big silhouette isn't the only danger. In the dark lanes between ship wakes, Japanese destroyers are doing what they do best, slipping in and launching torpedoes into the chaos. You don't see the torpedo, you see the result. A sudden explosion low on a hull, a plume of water and flame, a ship's lights flickering out like a dying city. This is where early radar is cruel. It can sometimes detect those small, fast shapes, and sometimes it can't. Land returns. Sea clutter. The close-range madness of everyone inside the same few miles of water. A destroyer might be on the scope and then vanish behind interference. A torpedo boat might never show until it has already fired. And the voices reporting contacts are frayed. Half shouts, half guesses, because men are trying to translate black water into certainty. Then, in the midst of it, comes the worst moment for any night battle. A friendly ship crosses a firing lane. Not clearly, not with time, just suddenly, steel sliding into the line of fire like fate stepping into the beam. A gun crew sees a silhouette and reacts, because in battle, hesitation kills. They fire. The shells are already out before someone screams, "Hold! That's ours!" The rounds splash close, or hit. Nobody can even say for sure in the smoke and glare. But the message hits the fleet like an electric shock. We're firing blind. The radar isn't saving us. And now the only thing separating enemy target from friendly tragedy is a human brain under maximum stress. Meanwhile, High situation is deteriorating. The battleship is trying to withdraw up the slot, but her course is ugly, her speed inconsistent. Fires burn in her superstructure. The glow is faint, but in this darkness, any glow is a beacon. American commanders understand something important in that moment. Even if we don't sink her right now, daylight will. Because on Guadalcanal, dawn belongs to aircraft. Planes from Henderson Field and carrier aircraft, if they're close enough, will swarm any damaged Japanese capital ship caught within range. A battleship that can't get out of the area before daylight is a battleship that becomes a target for bombs and torpedoes and relentless air attack. So the American aim shifts subtly. Not kill her now, but hurt her enough that the sun finishes her. And as High stumbles away, American ships, many of them damaged themselves, begin to disengage in fragments, pulled apart by smoke, confusion, and fear of more torpedoes. But the Japanese haven't finished trying to impose their own ending. Kiroshima's presence in the dark is a looming threat. If she gets a clean firing solution, if she can bring her heavy guns to bear on a cruiser or flagship, she could still turn the entire night battle. And the Americans know it. They feel it as a pressure on every decision. Don't slow down, don't illuminate yourself, don't get pinned by a searchlight, don't drift into a battleship's range. Down in CIC, the radar operator finally gets a cleaner return, just for a moment. A large contact, heavy, moving away. He calls it out, voice urgent now. Large target, bearing, range, closing. But the officer snaps. Which large target? We've got two. The operator's mouth goes dry, because he can't be sure. And when you can't be sure in a night battle, you're not an eye. You're a rumor. Above deck, the ocean flashes again. Another broadside, heavier, slower, deeper. A battleship firing. Which one? Who's being hit? The answers are hidden behind smoke and the limitations of instruments that are still learning how to tell the truth. And out in the darkness, High keeps limping, wounded but not dead, pulling the battle's gravity with her. Because a damaged battleship is a magnet for both sides. The Japanese trying to shield it, the Americans trying to finish it. And somewhere between those opposing impulses is the moment the title promised. A night where the radar picture, wrong by seconds and miles, helped turn tight waters into a crossfire. So that when the sun rose, a battleship that believed it could escape discovered the ocean had already decided it couldn't. November 13th, 1942, 6:12 a.m. off Guadalcanal. High running north, wounded, slow, and lit by our own fires. Morning doesn't arrive like peace. It arrives like exposure. The sky lightens from black to bruised gray, and suddenly the sea has depth again. Waves, wakes, oil slicks debris. The silhouettes that were ghosts an hour ago become unmistakably ships, and the damage that was hidden in darkness becomes visible in a way that makes your stomach drop. High is out there, not sinking yet, but wounded in the way capital ships dread most. Hurt in control, hurt in cohesion, hurt in the places that turn steel into coordinated movement. Her superstructure is battered. Fires smoke from upper decks. Parts of her look scorched, torn, scraped by shell hits that would have been minor on paper, but catastrophic in the living reality of a night brawl. And the biggest wound, the one that changes everything, is that she's not running clean. Her steering has been compromised. Her ability to maneuver is degraded. She's trying to withdraw up the slot, away from Guadalcanal and away from daylight. But she can't get away fast enough, because on Guadalcanal, the sun isn't just a clock. It's an executioner. At Henderson Field, American aircraft are already spinning up, engines coughing to life, propellers biting morning air. Pilots are being briefed with the simplest kind of briefing. There's a Japanese battleship out there. In a war where ships can vanish into night and distance, daylight is the moment the ocean gives away secrets. A damaged ship leaves a trail. Smoke is a beacon. Slower speed is a confession. High is confessing in broad daylight. The first planes arrive like insects, not in one neat wave, more like a growing swarm. Dive bombers, torpedo bombers, fighters. Some are from Henderson. Some are from other Allied sources moving in the area. They come in at different altitudes, different angles, searching for the most wounded part of the beast. The battleship's anti-aircraft guns begin to chatter, but the guns are defending a ship that is already bleeding. And each pass adds more blood. A bomb hits near the superstructure, spraying fragments, ripping steel, feeding fires. A torpedo runs in and detonates against the hull, throwing a slab of water as high as a building. The ship shudders. The wake changes. Men on deck cling to rails. Damage control parties run, faces blackened, hands raw, trying to stop flooding that wants to become a slow, inevitable sink. From the air, it's almost clinical. Target acquired, approach, release, pull up. From the ship, it's hell. The scream of diving aircraft, the snap of near misses, the concussion of hits, the terrifying realization that there is no darkness to hide in anymore. High tries to protect herself by moving, turning, accelerating, changing course. But steering damage makes every maneuver slower, uglier. She's a giant trying to dance with a broken ankle. And the pilots see it. They see the hesitation in her turns. They see the predictability. They adjust their runs accordingly. Meanwhile, Japanese destroyers and other escorts try to screen her, laying smoke, positioning themselves between her and attackers like bodyguards, throwing their bodies in front of bullets. But the smoke is thin in daylight, and aircraft can simply climb above it. The battleship's presence, once meant to be a weapon against Henderson Field, has become an anchor dragging the Japanese formation into danger. This is where the night's confusion comes due. Because in the night battle, the Americans didn't sink Hai cleanly with one perfect salvo. They damaged her enough. They disorganized her enough. They shattered her command and control enough. And enough is deadly when the sun rises. All morning, the air attacks continue. Hai's AA guns fire until barrels heat. Men feed ammunition until their arms shake. Damage control crews fight fires that reignite. Flooding spreads. Power becomes unreliable in sections. Communications fail. The ship's captain and surviving officers are trying to do the impossible. Keep a wounded battleship alive while the sky repeatedly hammers it. At some point, the question shifts from, can we save her, to can we at least keep her from being captured? Because capture of a battleship, especially one that carries technology and codes and prestige, is unthinkable, and the sea is unforgiving. By midday, Hai's situation is beyond recovery. She's too damaged, too exposed, too slow. The escorts can't shield her forever. The damage control teams are exhausted and losing the fight against physics. So the decision is made. Abandon ship. Not cleanly. Not all at once. It begins with orders that sound unreal on a battleship. Destroy documents. Destroy sensitive gear. Prepare to transfer survivors. Men climb down nets into destroyers. Officers try to keep order while smoke and heat turn corridors into ovens. And then, when enough men are off, when the ship can no longer be saved, Japanese forces finish what the Americans started. In the late afternoon/evening, after repeated air attacks and damage, Hai is scuttled and sinks. The battleship that came to bombard an airfield becomes a wreck on the seafloor. Another name in Ironbottom sounds growing cemetery. And that's the cruel irony of radar and night war. Radar didn't kill Hai, but the night's misreads, seconds, bearings, mistaken identifications, helped create a knife-range brawl where she took the kind of damage that makes daylight fatal. A small mistake at night doesn't always look like a mistake at the moment. It looks like a ship turning too late, a beam landing on a wrong hull, a formation compressing by a mile, a broadside fire to what you think you're seeing. And then, 6 hours later, it looks like a battleship dying in the sun. Ironbottom sound earns its name one sinking at a time. And while Hai goes down, the battle for Guadalcanal isn't finished. Not even close. Because the Japanese still have more ships, more plans, more night runs down the slot. And the Americans, bloodied and shaken, are about to face the same nightmare again. Only next time, it won't be cruisers and destroyers tangled in a dark brawl. Next time, the stage will belong to battleships on both sides. And the radar, young, brilliant, unreliable, will be asked to do the one thing it struggles with most. Tell the truth fast enough to keep men alive. November 14th, 1942, 11:52 p.m. The slot, Guadalcanal's black throat, where ships slide down like knives. The sea is darker tonight, if that's even possible. Black water under black sky, only the faintest starlight scattered by cloud. The air smells like rain that hasn't fallen yet, and the horizon is a rumor. Somewhere ahead, Henderson Field is still there, still alive, still the reason every ship in these waters is willing to die. The Americans have learned the hard way what the Japanese can do at night. They've felt the torpedoes. They've watched ships burn. They've seen a battleship, Hai, wounded and finished by daylight. Now, they're setting a different kind of trap. This time, the American force includes battleships. USS Washington, BB-56, and USS South Dakota, BB-57. Fast battleships sliding into Ironbottom sound like two heavy fists. Their escorts include destroyers, but everyone understands what the centerpiece is tonight. Big guns, radar, and the hope that the next night fight won't dissolve into chaos the way the last one did. In Washington CIC, the green radar scope glows again, familiar, hypnotic. The plotters are faster now, more practiced, but the stress is the same. Because the lesson of the previous night still hangs in the air like smoke. The scope can be right and still kill you if you act on it wrong. Operators call out bearings and ranges. Contacts appear, multiple, sliding down the slot. The Japanese are coming again, and this time they aren't bringing Hai. They're bringing Kirishima, another battleship, with escorts, still intent on smashing Henderson Field and rewriting the island's fate with shell fire. The Americans move to intercept. Destroyers up front, screening, probing, ready to launch torpedoes. Battleships behind, radar eyes open, guns loaded, waiting for the moment they can fire with certainty. But certainty is thin in these waters. As the forces close, the first thing that breaks isn't steel. It's cohesion. A destroyer reports contacts, then loses them behind clutter. A radar plot shows a group, then the group splits. Someone calls a bearing, then another ship calls a different bearing, and both sound confident. The voice circuits begin to fill with overlapping information. Target bearing, range, speed, new contact, no, correction, multiple. And in that rising noise, the same danger returns. The picture is slipping. At the front, American destroyers clash first. Torpedoes launched into black water, gunfire flashing, shells cracking through night. Japanese destroyers answer with their own torpedo spreads. The long-lance threat that haunts every American commander like a nightmare you can't wake from. Explosions bloom, brief suns on the sea. A destroyer takes a hit and becomes a burning shape drifting out of formation. The screen begins to thin, and that's when the battleship's night becomes lethal. On South Dakota, something goes wrong. Not one dramatic failure, but a chain, electrical issues, circuit overloads, systems flickering and dropping out. Radios fail. Radar performance degrades. Communications become unreliable at exactly the moment you need them most. In the dark, a battleship without reliable sensors and comms is not a god. It's a huge silhouette waiting to be found. Washington still has radar picture. Washington still has comm plotting. But she is moving in formation with a sister ship that is starting to stumble, blind spots forming, timing slipping. And in tight water at night, timing isn't a detail. It's life. Japanese searchlights snap on. White beams slash across the sound and land, hard, on South Dakota. The light pins her like a nail through steel. In that brutal illumination, she becomes unmistakable. Battleship, massive, present, and suddenly the center of attention. Japanese cruisers and destroyers hammer her with gunfire. Shells splash. Shells hit. Metal rings. Sparks scatter. The ship absorbs punishment in the way battleships do, by being huge. But each hit is still a punch to the men inside. In South Dakota, struggling with systems, struggles to answer cleanly. This is the nightmare scenario of the radar lied in a new form. It's not that the radar on Washington is wrong. It's that the formation's shared understanding is breaking. One ship sees clearly. One ship is half blind. And the enemy is using light and instinct to exploit the seam. On Washington, the captain, Captain Glenn B. Davis, and his gunnery team watched the chaos. South Dakota lit up, taking hits, drawing fire like a magnet. The temptation is to rush in, to close, to protect. But closing risks something fatal, drifting into a torpedo spread, or revealing yourself too soon. Instead, Washington does something colder, smarter. She stays darker. She stays just far enough off that Japanese gunners, focused on the brilliant, obvious target, don't immediately realize another American battleship is nearby. And on radar, Washington now has something priceless. A clean target, a large contact, battleship-sized, moving and firing in the confusion. Kirishima. The gunnery officer's voice is controlled, but you can feel the electricity under it. Solution good. Target course steady. The director slews. Guns train. The big 16-inch rifles are ready. And here is the razor moment where early radar can either save the night or doom it. Because if the identification is wrong, if that radar return is a friendly ship, or if the range is misread by just enough, then the first salvo could be catastrophe. But the plot aligns. The bearing makes sense. The visual glimpses match the radar picture. This is the moment they've been waiting for. An enemy battleship exposed in a night fight, unaware it's being hunted. Open fire. Washington's 16-inch guns speak. The night erupts in a way only battleship guns can make it erupt. Orange fireballs, concussions slamming through the hull, shells leaving the barrels with a sound like ripping sky. Seconds later, the first hits land on Kirishima, and suddenly the roles reverse. The hunter, illuminating South Dakota, realizes too late there is another predator in the dark. Kirishima is struck hard, multiple times, heavy shells smashing into superstructure, turrets, machinery spaces. Fires bloom. Systems fail. Her silhouette, Once confident, becomes disordered. She tries to turn, tries to escape, but now she's the wounded capital ship in Ironbottom Sound, and the night has already chosen its victim. On South Dakota, still in searchlight glare, men feel the shift without seeing it fully. Japanese fire begins to waver. Confusion spreads. The enemy's focus is breaking. Because somewhere out in the dark, Washington has found the truth. And the truth is arriving at 2,700-pound intervals. Hiroshima begins to burn. And in that burning, you can feel the story's central theme sharpen. In night combat, the first broadside doesn't just damage steel. It damages certainty, the side that keeps its picture intact. Radar, comms, discipline, turns darkness into an ally. The side that loses its picture by error, by overload, by misidentification, gets crossfired into history. And as Hiroshima staggers under radar-directed fire, the question becomes the same one Hai faced the morning before. Can a battleship escape Ironbottom Sound long enough to reach safety? Or has the night already written its ending? Hiroshima doesn't understand what's happening at first. Not fully, because in a night fight, you don't get the luxury of a clear story. You get flashes, impacts, shouting, the ship vibrating under recoil, the sudden, sickening sensation of being hit by something heavier than anything you've faced so far. The first 16-inch shell that lands doesn't just tear steel. It rearranges the ship's reality. A violent crash shudders through the hull. Lights flicker. Men are thrown against bulkheads. Somewhere deep inside, a compartment fills with smoke, then screaming heat. In the superstructure, shards of metal scythe through spaces that were safe a second ago. The bridge crew flinches, eyes wide, trying to figure out where the blow came from. Because Hiroshima's gunners have been firing at what they can see, a brilliantly illuminated American battleship, South Dakota, pinned in searchlight glare like an insect. That's how night fighting has worked for them. Light up the target. Hammer the target. Move before dawn. But now the target they can't see is killing them. In the darkness off their beam, Washington is invisible. No searchlight pinned to her, no easy silhouette, just radar precision and heavy guns speaking from the black. Hiroshima takes another hit, then another. The rhythm becomes terrifying. Impact, pause, impact again, each one landing with the confidence of a marksman who can see in the dark. And that's the moment the Japanese on Hiroshima begin to grasp the worst possibility. They're being fired on by a battleship they haven't even identified yet. The bridge tries to respond. Identify source of fire. Searchlight sweep. Turn to unmasked turrets. Order stack on top of each other. A helmsman moves the wheel. The ship begins to turn, slow, heavy, committed. In daylight, that turn would be an elegant arc. At night, under radar-directed fire, it's a confession. Because as Hiroshima turns, her silhouette shifts relative to Washington's radar picture, but the radar doesn't care. It tracks. It updates. It feeds gunnery with cold, accurate numbers. A shell crashes into Hiroshima's upper works and wrecks part of her fire control. Cables severed, instruments smashed, men killed at their stations. Another hits near a turret, jamming machinery, turning a gun house into an iron coffin. The battleship tries to answer with her own heavy guns, 14-inch rifles roaring into the night. But her fire is less coordinated now, her picture collapsing. She's firing at shadows and hope while her enemy is firing at a plotted solution. And South Dakota, still lit up, still being pounded by lighter calibers, becomes almost irrelevant to the main drama now. She is the decoy by accident, the loud distraction, the ship that drew the enemy's gaze while her sister lined up the kill. On Washington, the gunnery team stays steady. They don't cheer. They don't count hits like points. They keep firing because the only safe assumption in a night action is that the enemy is still lethal until he's not. Salvo on. The turrets speak again. The ship trembles with each firing. The crew feels the concussion in bones. And Hiroshima's situation worsens. At some point, the damage reaches the place every warship fears. Steering. A battleship can survive horrific superstructure damage. It can take punishment and keep afloat. But if it loses control, if it can't steer, can't coordinate power, can't maneuver out of the danger zone, then it becomes a target that can be methodically dismantled. Hiroshima begins to swing wider than intended. Her turn becomes sluggish, unresponsive. A rudder hit, or related steering damage, takes away the clean arc. The ship starts circling, not dramatically, subtly at first. A widening curve, a helpless drift. And on a night battlefield, a battleship circling is like a wounded animal running in place. It's alive, but it's not escaping. The Japanese escorts, destroyers, and cruisers try to intervene. Torpedoes are launched. Smoke is laid. Guns fire toward muzzle flashes they can't quite locate. But the sound is crowded, and the problem is brutal. You can't shield a battleship from a battleship if you can't find the battleship that's killing you. Washington stays in the dark, using radar like a private sense. The Japanese searchlights sweep, but fog, smoke, and confusion make them clumsy. When beams slice across the water, they catch wreckage, splashes, empty space. Never the quiet predator sitting just far enough away. A final series of hits lands that changes Hiroshima from damaged to doomed. Fires bloom in multiple places. Turrets become unreliable. The superstructure becomes a jagged skyline of flame. The ship lists slightly, then corrects, then lists again, like she's trying to balance on a knife edge. On Hiroshima's bridge, officers look at the sea and the sky and realize something deeply humiliating and deeply fatal. They're losing the night, and the night was supposed to be theirs. They came down the slot to bombard an airfield and demonstrate control. Instead, they've been ambushed by a battleship they never saw. This is the core horror of radar-era night combat. The enemy can kill you without revealing himself. A ship you can't identify can still land precise hits, because it isn't aiming at a silhouette. It's aiming at your coordinates. And the psychological impact is as deadly as the shells. Because once a crew believes they're being hit by an unseen opponent, fear creeps into every decision. Searchlights become frantic. Maneuvers become desperate. The elegant choreography of night doctrine turns into scrambling survival. Hiroshima's captain faces the decision Hai faced the day before. Only now it's happening under stars, not sunlight. Do we try to limp away? Do we keep fighting? Do we scuttle? Because if Hiroshima can't escape before daylight, then dawn will do to her what it did to Hai. Except maybe faster, because now the Americans know exactly what a wounded Japanese battleship looks like at dawn. And as Hiroshima continues to circle, wounded, burning, blind to the predator that's killing her, the sound feels suddenly smaller, like a room with the doors closed. And in that room, Washington is still firing, still tracking, still invisible, because the radar didn't just give the Americans eyes. It gave them something worse for the Japanese, a way to turn darkness into certainty. And now Hiroshima has only one hope left, not to win, to escape. But the first broadside has already decided who still has engines. By the time the gunfire slackens, the night has a different sound. Less thunder, more crackle, fires popping in twisted steel, the low groan of a damaged hull working against waves, the distant shout of men in the water, thin, desperate voices that make every sailor's skin tighten. Hiroshima is still afloat, but she's no longer fighting. She's surviving. And survival for a battleship is a mechanical problem that becomes a moral one in minutes. On her decks, damage control teams move through smoke and heat, stepping over debris, trying to seal compartments, try to fight fires that keep reappearing like living things. Men drag hoses that feel too small for the inferno. Others bang on warped hatches, shouting into darkness where trapped sailors might still be alive. A turret crew waits for orders that may never come, listening to the ship's structure creak as if it's speaking in a language of strain. But the most frightening thing isn't fire. It's the list. A subtle tilt at first, barely noticeable if you aren't trained to feel in your knees. Then a little more. The ship's horizon is no longer perfectly level. Loose items begin to slide. Oil pools where it shouldn't. List means flooding. Flooding means time. And time, for a crippled battleship near Guadalcanal, is the one resource you do not have. Because dawn is coming again. And dawn in Ironbottom, sound belongs to American aircraft and American eyes. The Japanese escorts gather around Hiroshima like worried siblings. Destroyers and cruisers circle, laying smoke, scanning for Washington even though the immediate threat has pulled away. Washington has already done what she came to do, cripple the battleship and survive. Staying longer would mean drifting into torpedo danger, or revealing herself in a chaotic endgame. So Washington withdraws into the black, leaving Hiroshima burning in the night like a lighthouse nobody wants. Now Hiroshima's captain faces the reality that is both strategic and personal. A battleship is not just steel. It's prestige, doctrine, pride, the idea that you can control the sea. To lose it here, within sight of the island that has already swallowed so many ships, is more than a defeat. It's an admission that the sea around Guadalcanal is cursed territory. The ship's steering problems worsen. The list grows. Pumps struggle. Power is unreliable. Fire breaks through again where it was contained. And somewhere on the bridge, an officer watches the stars sliding slowly above the masts and realizes the night isn't saving them. It's counting down. Orders begin to shift from save the ship to save the crew. Sensitive materials are destroyed, codes, documents, anything that would be valuable if the ship went down in a way that left survivors to be captured. Men are told to prepare a transfer. Some begin climbing down nets into destroyers, moving with the quiet disbelief of sailors abandoning something that was supposed to outlast them. You can almost feel the emotional conflict. A battleship is home in war. It is your world. Leaving it feels like leaving the last solid thing you own. But the sea doesn't care about your feelings. The sea only cares about openings. And Kirishima has openings now. Flooding spreads. Compartment by compartment, the water finds its way, heavy and patient. The list becomes unmistakable. Now the deck isn't just tilted. It's angled enough to force men to brace themselves when they run. Shell casings roll. Loose gear slides. Fires burn sideways. The escorts stay close, taking men aboard, shuttling survivors, trying to do it fast enough that the approaching morning doesn't catch them in the open with a crippled capital ship and a cluster of vulnerable destroyers. Then comes the final decision. Scuttle. A word that sounds simple until you understand what it means. You are killing your own ship because you have to, either to prevent capture, to spare more loss, or because the ship is already dying and you're just choosing how it dies. Kirishima is abandoned and scuttled. She sinks in the early hours of November 15th, 1942. And just like that, another battleship becomes part of Ironbottom Sound's name. Steel and pride dropped into dark water. In the hours after, the crews left afloat count what's left. The Americans count their damaged ships and the fact that Henderson Field is still alive, still able to launch aircraft, still a knife pointed into Japanese supply lines. The Japanese count the battleships they lost and what those losses mean. The bombardment effort has been blunted, the Tokyo Express runs are now even more dangerous, and the island that was supposed to be crushed is still biting. This is where the title's promise lands with full weight. The night the radar lied, and the nights the radar told the truth, both cost battleships. In the first night action, the confusion, the mixed contacts, the misidentifications, the too-tight formation. Those human radar seams helped create a brawl where High took fatal damage and couldn't escape daylight. In the second night, radar became the invisible predator, allowing Washington to find Kirishima without being found, turning darkness into a firing solution and making the first heavy salvo decide the battle's shape. Same technology, two different outcomes. Because radar isn't magic. It's a tool that amplifies whatever the humans around it are doing. Discipline, confusion, skill, panic. At Guadalcanal, the Americans were learning. Sometimes they learned by nearly shooting each other. Sometimes they learned by killing a battleship in the dark. But either way, the Sound kept taking ships. And the men who survived those nights carried a new understanding forward into the rest of the Pacific War. In daylight, you fear what you can see. At night, you fear what you think you see. And in the glow of a radar scope, the most dangerous thing isn't darkness. It's believing the green blip more than the sea itself. Because the sea doesn't lie. It just waits for you to make one mistake, and then it takes the ship that made it. Yendi,